It's only in July into August, last half of July until Mars goes into his 12th house. I always mark that when Mars is in the 12th house. But this gives the personal things that are happening within a year mixed in with the big things that are happening within this year or two. This is the 2-year graph. So we had the 8-year, we got the overview. Once we got the whole picture, we're puzzling about it. Then he's coming to see you today, and you got to look at where you are today. So here it starts in September, but we're going to look at October the 8th. So we looked at October the 8th. Yeah, here we are. Mars just opposed his moon yesterday. So he's going to be late, or he gets here just, he's hassled, he's time pressured. So he didn't really, we're doing a session here, so he didn't really come in on this night. So, but if he did, you would be doing it that day. You'd see the energy coming up to here, that he's gone through this new understanding, opposed to by the end of through September. And he's like, and you have a bit of room before he gets to the Jupiter opposed Mercury. And he got 6 months to play with before he gets into the Neptune factors. So you get the texture more immediately. You have things to talk about, see how it's working, how he's going to play it, and you try and keep him out of trouble. You know where the Saturn's going. You know he's building up skills. You know he's going up to being more functional. He's got to let go of the kids. What's he going to do after the kids are gone? Well, like all of these things are coming in and tied into this. So okay, I always do this 2-year graph. So we're going to do this. We got the Saturn, we got the 8-year, then we're going to add the 2-year graph. The 2-year, not the graph, the 2-year printout for Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. You choose those planets. Don't include the Sun, Mercury, or Venus, or the Moon. They're too trivial. They happen too fast, too often. But this is anything significant is going to be happening with the Mars, Jupiter. That way, if we're in between the Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. So this gives us 2 years more detailed than the 8 years. And it lets you be a bit more equipped to walking into life and seeing what's immediately happening. Okay. So here you have the natal chart, you have the progressions around the chart. We did this with the extended, we usually work in the standard mode of a wind star. We put this up, we click onto the extended mode, you can get this chart where you do the progressions and they put them around the chart. It's nice. If you have the defaults and you got the defaults I sent out, then you have the colors aligned properly and you can see the colors. So when you're looking at this, there's just the only confusion in this printout, which I don't like, you don't have an option to change it. It gives every aspect to every planet from the progressions and the natal. So there's like twice as many aspects. It's too much to work with. It's just a big maze. It's too much to work with to figure out. But you can see them if you need to, but I don't work with that. But what it's useful, you can see here's the Sun in Cancer. It's moved along through Cancer to Leo. It's gone into Virgo in the last couple of years. Again, accentuating the Mercury rulership again, bringing up this Mercury is becoming more important than his Sun. Being the dad for the kids, it's changing. So you can see that. And it's in his 12th house, so he's been working, he's been achieving and doing all this. What's next? How to get out of these things? What's going on next? So there's the 12th house concern until he comes up to the ascendant, and he wants to be, his progression is going to be pushed to his own, to what am I doing? So you can look at each progression, look at the natal chart and see around it, but we got better calculations, but it just lets you see it. You can see the moon over here is progressed moons in Capricorn. Okay, so one of the first things we have to find out is find it because we know it's there. I can eyeball it and I'll tell you that's the waxing gibbous moon building up to the full moon. But usually we're going to have to look it up, and so that's the first thing we do. We look up, we run off the moon phases of the Sun, the moon, progression moon, to the progressed, the progressed moon to the progressed Sun. And you just put the hard aspects, conjunctions, squares, oppositions, 45 and 135, and it lays out your 8 phases of the moon in order. Okay, I've highlighted the line. This is January 1st, 22. There's the gibbous moon 135. There's the conjunction in 2008, so new moon is 2008. Builds up, it's become the full moons in 2022. That's a completion, inner completion. And right now he's between just trying to complete things. He's almost seen things, almost pushed things as far as he can. He's at this fuller illumination point. This is where it gets to. That's the give us, waxing, give us. Okay, so the other thing you want to check, we do this is we want to check we go into the events and we want to check the eclipse, see what's an eclipse. So we get the eclipses for the year. He is the ephemeris too. He's born in July 5th, so this one for March 17th is before he's born, doesn't count. April before he was born. So the last three eclipses are going to be after he's born, and they happen to be within a few months. So these are going to be 3 eclipses that happen in his life in the progressed moon cycle. So his progressed full moon doesn't give you the dates here, it gives you the degree, 358. Progressed full moon, and then the progressed new moon, the solar eclipse, 18 Virgo, and then the next progressed full moon is 2 Aries. That's going to be an eclipse also. So these are 3 eclipses. So we're looking 358. When you go along here, you'll see this full moon in 2022 is at 358 Pisces. And you see here Pisces Virgo. So we know this is an eclipse. He's coming up to the full moon and it'll be eclipse. Now eclipses aren't from progressions, they're not so much of a negative thing. There are points where there's extra sensitivity and you're able to get a spiritual awareness of where you are in the world of things. If you're not centered, yeah, it can bring in greater doubts in that, but I look at them as points for spiritual awareness or understanding of things at the opposition, and really for personal retreats on the new moon. So they're enhanced meditative times. But that's coming up, his completion coming up 2022. By then the kids have got through university, or one of them will be through and the other one may be finishing. And his life is going to go on from, he's done that, and then it'll go on. What's next? Who decides? Him or his wife? Or how do they decide what they want to do? Or do they want to do the same things? But that there's an eclipse there, it just means there's an extra intensity that he's building up to. And you can see that's the building up from the 8-year graph. We know that's building up the time of the Neptune factor is building up. He's just finishing the Saturn. He's in the middle of Neptune, and it's going on to Saturn and Neptune for 4 years. And this really builds us up. Neptune for 3 years, and then it hits Mercury. But this is building up right to this full moon. You don't know what it means. When you're doing a chart, you get all these factors. You see what it could be. You see the potential. You see that you get alert to this is there at this time. You've added into the time frame, which hopefully you've anchored by the Saturn graph. You've anchored his time frame, and everything else is add-ons onto that time frame. And you just try and remember more or less this time perspective for us. And this is coming up. And there's this to it too. Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily talk to him right about it, but it might get to that. It's useful to have it in the background. So I think he's completing his role as dad and parents, not as he sees it, because he's going to be grandparent or whatever, but he's worked so hard for it. But you have the expectations for your kids so much, and what they decide to do may not be what you want them to do. So that may be some of his Neptune factors. Okay, so here's with the progressions. Remember, have to remember, we're not defining someone. We're tuning into the complexes, to the matrix of someone, to the matrix of their nature, and to the matrix of their timing of where they are in time. And all of it, there's choices of how they're being. There's different ways of using this. And you're going to have to observe. A person could have the same chart. One person could be a murderer, one person could be a saint, and they're just using the same energies. One's buying into it, one's not. And it makes a huge difference. So your sense of what's right, wrong, of knowing what to do, what not to do, is a very strong thing. So your willpower and your living creatively works and makes things happen. So as you observe, so you can't see if someone's good or bad from a chart. You see these extreme points, these vulnerable points. So you see the Neptune factor going on. So you're going to ask things. Neptune's on the ascendant. How you get along with your wife? You're going to say, what are your plans? Where are you planning to? What are you planning? What you're going to do? What are you doing for yourself? You're going to focus on the ascendant, descendant, ask some questions, and he'll come up with the Neptune factor. We'll show you. And then it's squaring him. And he may be working where he doesn't want to work, but he has to hold it to hold everything together. He holds the job. He wants to get out of the job. And maybe the wife has to carry it more, or some changes, or just it changes. Like some things can come up around that. So you don't know. So, okay, here we put in the moon, the 3 cycles of the moon going around, like the Saturn cycle, only this is the moon. So the Saturn cycle anchors your time. You got it. This is the things going on. This is the added agenda of things going on within you, inside of you, as you're dealing with the outside things. Sometimes if you're getting support from the inside things, the outside things are easy to deal with. But sometimes you have good things happen outwardly, but if you're inwardly challenged, you're not giving 100% to the outer, and you don't get as much done, which is where most of us are. Okay, so when we're looking at this, got all the dates. We can get into this in detail. Really, his moon starts in the descendant, so it's going to follow pretty well 14 years above, 14 years below. It's going to go around like that. But we start with, we've marked the sun. We saw the sun before on the graph, and here's the sun. It's going to go through his life. It's going to go through Leo, through Virgo, over his ascendant. It's going to cross his ascendant angle, his identity, empowering his identity. And then it's going to go down into the first, into the second, maybe in the second house. This is his life path of his progressed sun.